Nicely done. So congratulations on that. And thank you for being a guest today on the Audacious Living Podcast.
And I will thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this interview. I really enjoyed our talk, and I really appreciate what you do and keep up. Here's to another 500 episodes of the Audacious Living Podcast.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings, salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our mission is to inspire you to live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us for this enlightening journey. You know, this podcast is all about exploring the depths of personal growth, resilience, and the mindset needed to tackle life's challenges head on. Together, we'll uncover strategies and stories that empower you to embrace your true potential and live boldly. Now, imagine you're an actor stepping onto a stage, the spotlight is shining bright, and as you take center stage, the audience is eagerly awaiting for your performance. But the weight of self-doubt can feel like a heavy curtain ready to drop on you and obscure your performance. Now, in the performing arts, self-doubt often looms larger than life, much like an unwelcome, stagehand, if you will. Albert Bramante, he emphasizes the importance of recognizing and addressing self-doubt, much like a director who encourages actors to rehearse their lines until they feel confident and are prepared. The fear of success can be one that is most powerful because one of the most powerful obstacles, causing actors to self-sabotage and retreat into their shells. But just as a skilled actor learns to embrace the stage, we too can normalize our fears and focus on the joy of the performance rather than the outcome. Albert's concept of a happy life or happy file serves as a beacon of light, reminding us to collect and cherish those moments of positivity, motivating us through those challenges that life throws our way. Albert Bramante is today's guest, and he's the owner of Bramante Artists. He's a talent agency in New York City with over 21 years of experience in talent representation. With a background in psychology and a mindset coach, Albert specializes in helping performers overcome self-doubt and cultivate a growth mindset. He's the author of an insightful book, Rise Above the Script, where he delves into the themes of self. Hey, Albert, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for making the time to do this.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's always a pleasure. I mean, so for me, the opportunity to engage in conversation that can potentially help others and have an impact in a positive fashion in their lives is always a great thing. And so it's good to connect with you on this level. One of the things that really encouraged Albert is individuals to sort of live their best audacious life, right? And part of that is recognizing that that we are on our own path, right? It's our individual journey. We're going to come into whatever obstacles, but there are ours to overcome. There are things that will come in our way, we're impacted, but we still have to find that push to get through. And oftentimes it starts with the mindset and how we think about ourselves and what we feel, and that's really the difference maker. And I know as a coach that you sort of spend a lot of time helping people cultivate that kind of growth mindset, if you will. And so maybe as a starting point, I'll get you, Albert, to introduce yourself to our audience, tell us about your work and kind of what's got you to the point that you're at now.
Sure. Well, thank you again. My name is Albert Bramante. I am the owner of a talent agency in New York, Bramante Artists. I've been working in the talent representation sphere for about 21 years now. I represent actors for all mediums: film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover. And I also have a background in psychology and mindset coaching. I have training in NLP, neuro linguistic programming. So I also know how the importance of having a growth mindset is. So during my time working as a talent agent representing so many actors from all walks of life, one theme that really kept popping up was self-doubt and which translated a lot of times into self-sabotaging behavior. And so that really led me down the path of studying this more. Being myself as being an academic, I always loved to study. I've always had that curiosity, even as a kid growing up, just studying and reading and researching and knowing things. So I wanted to really know, why were these actors engaging in such of these self-sabotaging behavior? When on the conscious level, they were telling me they wanted to work, they wanted to succeed, but their behavior was showing me a different picture. And so that's what led me to study. When I was in grad school, I did a dissertation on this topic, and then I wrote a book last year called Rise Above the Script, which deals with confronting self-doubt and mastering self-sabotage for performing artists. So that's what's really brought me here today. And, one of the things I talk about is fear of success.
Okay.
And how that really is a major driver in the self-sabotaging, theme, in a sense.
So it's the fear of success.
Yes.
Wow. It's interesting. I mean, you think that most people are going after the thing because they want the success, but then to be fearful of that thing you want is kind of oxymoron a little bit, I think, eh?
100%. And it's not a conscious fear. It's not like people are walking around saying, I have a fear of success. What's really happening here is the success sometimes comes with change. And it really boils down to fear of change. Because as human beings, we crave comfort, we crave routine. And we're comfortable in that routine space and having everything in a laid out way, where success could mean your life could go in a different direction. You can move, you could get that promotion. And at the same time, it could also cost relationships too.
Yep.
And that is something that, as a fundamental fear and a fundamental need for closeness and security, can be a bit scary. So it's, even though we umbrella that as fear of success, I always felt that it boils down to fear of change, the fear of different things being different. And so consciously we want to be successful, but then on the subconscious level or the deeper level, there's a fear that things are going to be different. Relationships may change, our life circumstances are going to change, and that might be scary.
No, that's a really interesting point. I really do think when you talk about your work in the talent agency, and again, you work with performing artists, but also you combine that with the work around fear and self-doubt, how the two sort of work so closely hand with one another, especially for someone getting up on stage. I remember. I used to do a little bit of commercial work, right? And you go in these auditions and you walk in the room and every single person looks like you, and you're looking around and going, "Wow!" And you start to go, and so I've experienced that. Like you start to question yourself, like, "Why am I here?" And am I supposed to be here? And how do I compete with that? And all of that. And so I wonder if for individuals in those or going through those experiences, what one or two sort of suggestions or tips would you make to help people kind of get through those moments of fear or self-doubt?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I would normalize that to some extent, that's okay, that, and quite common to have that fear or that little self-doubt. Because when you go on the audition, you're putting yourself out there. You're kind of like bearing your soul, and to a room full of strangers, in a sense where like you're kind of saying, please hire me in a nutshell. So the one thing I would say is really get into a good headspace beforehand. One thing I really recommend is visualization beforehand. A great common strategy is to visualize it. So spend even the day before the audition, the morning of the audition, just visualizing or imagining, if you will, the audition going well, that you get a good reception, everybody loves you.
Yep.
And then when you walk in there, your confidence will be increased. Because the interesting thing about the brain does not know the difference between reality and imagination. So if you program yourself to be successful in your mind, there's a better chance that you're going to do a great job at the audition. And Also, one of the things about this business is it's not always about the audition. The audition is great. You have to do your job, but there's so many factors outside of the audition and outside of your control whether you land the job or not. So I often say, just do the best you can, and that's the battle. That's half the
Got you.
battle.
Got you. And I love the simplicity of that. Just do the best you can. Um, the I wonder if you sort of talk about the things out of your control. Like, give me some examples, sorts of things that we can't control.
The one thing is like what the director of the create ad agency in the commercial space is looking for. They or what they're imagining. And let's say you're working as far as part of a family unit. They're casting a family in a commercial. So you have to resemble the family. Can you really pass as this person's family member or friend? Is that going to be in your fare? You could be just an inch too tall or an inch too short. They want a different hair color, a different hairstyle.
Right.
That boils down to it. The point, though, is if you really give a great performance, you're going to be memorable in their eyes. They're going to keep calling you back.
Hmm.
In our industry, we call that booking the room, which
Yes.
means that you become fans of the casting director, the directors, the producers, so that when they're casting again for another spot or another project, another role, you come to mind,
Hmm.
and they keep calling you back. Now you're on their short list.
That's how it works. And yeah, again, so when you talk about things that you can't control or out of your control, that's certainly one of them. I remember once, again, I go into an audition and I felt really good. And they said they asked me to make a face or something, or some kind of funny face. So I made this funny face, and the guy laughed, and he said, "You made me laugh. That's a great thing." So obviously feeling good about it, right? And I left that, and they called me back. And I got a call, be here at 2 o'clock. So I'm feeling good. I'm like, I made the guy laugh. They're calling me back. Things are looking up. Within an hour later, I got called and said, "Oh, it's been canceled. They're going a different direction." So again, out of my control, I did everything I was supposed to do. I did everything within my scope of power, my influence. But as you talked about, there are other times or instances where things are just out of your control and you can't do nothing about it. And whether it falls in your lap or not, it's not for you to say. And I think that's a really the word acceptance comes to mind for me, right? In terms of accepting the reality of the situation.
100%. And it is acceptance. And letting go is another process that's
Mm,
important too. Soon as the audition, or whether it's an audition or an interview, or any type of match or any type of trial thing, let it go. When it's over, you walk out of that room, put it behind you. It's over because now it's not in your control anymore. And your next goal should be focusing on the next audition, the next interview, the next match, or whatever it is you're going for. And that should be your directing your mental energy to.
I'm curious, Albert. How did you land in this space? I'd love to know, especially again when you look at the two sides of your coin and and how well they fit to one another. How did you get here?
A very interesting journey, an unexpected journey.
They
So
usually
I
are, aren't they?
100%. So I always wanted to be a psychologist, and I went to school, undergrad, grad, PhD, all of that. And during my time, I always had an interest in creative arts. So I'd taken electives in college, and I was part of the drama club in high school. I took some theater classes in college. I was always interested in the acting space. And I even dabbled, you could say, a little bit as an actor. I did a couple
Hmm.
commercials back, years ago.
Sure.
So I didn't really like the lifestyle of the artist. It wasn't for me, but what I really enjoyed was being around creative energy, being around the actor archetype, or the artist archetype was like really invigorating and fun for me, and it meant so much to me. So as I was doing soul searching when I was in my 20s, what do I really want to do with my life?
Hmm.
I still love psychology. I still love the academic life, but it wasn't 100%. It wasn't giving me 100% fulfillment. So after a while, started helping with casting. I volunteered at film festivals, And I started meeting so many actors that I really wanted to support. So I was like,
Hmm.
why don't I manage them? Started as a manager in 2004. And then in 2008, I became a licensed agent in, New Jersey, New York area. And,
Hmm.
here I've been ever since. So I have double lives. I am a part-time college instructor. I teach psychology classes, but I also at the same time manage actors it's my business, full time.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Sure. Sure. And again, the two complement each other so nicely, right? It's nice. It's this kind of fusion, if you will.
100%. Yes. They really do. They really do complement each other and they help each other out. I mean, because I feel like I understand actors a little bit more than another agent might. At
Hmm.
least I can understand what they're going through, the
Sure.
daily struggles and the daily obstacles and the pressures that they face.
Especially psychologically, I think that's an important one, right? Because that, that, and what's happening in people's minds, and because our minds are so powerful, that sort of sets the stage for a kind of beautiful thing to happen. It's got to be, our mindset has to be a certain place, and so to have that level of understanding, I think is a beautiful compliment to your work.
100%. And that alludes to what, we were talking about earlier, the growth mindset.
Hmm.
One book I recommend to all your listeners to is the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, who I've studied her work, and it's so important to have that growth mindset because the acting business, the performing arts space, is so unpredictable,
Yeah.
and it's so overly saturated where there's many more performers than there are jobs.
Mm.
I mean, that's the reality. It's like almost the elephant in the room, you could say, is that there's more actors and opportunities. So only 1 to 2% or 3% of actors that are in the world are going to be working full time as an
Right.
actor. So the odds are sort of already stacked professionally
Right. Yep.
against every actor. So it's important to have that growth mindset or even that grit is what you would call it, that persistence, because it's going to take me years to find success.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times that's not mentioned in acting education
Sure.
or training is the amount of grit and resilience that's required.
Well, it does. It does take a lot to know, and I mean, I don't know the number of auditions an actor would go on, or an actress would go on in a given, say, week, month, year, however, whatever. But I would imagine it's an extremely high number. And let's just take a month. I mean, an actor could do 20 auditions in a month. And of those 20, they may get the role, what, three times? I don't know if that's a realistic number or.
That three is actually a very high number. In
Wow.
our circles, we kind of say 5%. So one out of the 20,
Mm,
will be booked. So every 20 auditions you go on, if you're booking one, you're still already ahead of the game.
wow.
And for somebody outside of this profession might say, well, those are really low numbers, but it's the reality. And this is why you can't. This is part of the reason why, going back to what I said earlier, let it go. You can't stress over the auditions. When they're
Yeah.
done, they're done. Let it go. Move on to the next one.
And it's interesting because sometimes these auditions, there's a lot of effort. So if you think about that as well too, there's a lot. I mean, the auditions might be short notice, right? You might not have a lot of advance time to prepare for it.
Mhm.
It might be who knows how far you're going, right, to travel there. And then when you get there, it's you and a room of 50 other people, right? And so you think there's a lot of effort to get there just to get that no. To know, like, I mean, it's really interesting to know that I'm going to go into this space expecting that it'll be a no, and I still got to perform at my best. I still got to be at my top level, knowing full well that's not going to pan out for you. That like
Yeah.
that approach is a powerful one to have.
And I will even kind of expand on that and say, look, rather than focusing on getting a job, enjoy the process.
Mm,
A lot of working actors will look at auditions and say, like, this is my opportunity. I have 2 minutes to do what I love, to perform, to play a character.
Yep.
Use that mindset when you go on audition. Say, hey, I'm going to do 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to let it go. I had
Mm,
fun for 2 or 3 minutes. I got to do what I love, and now time to move on to the next.
got it.
And if you get the job, that's great. But however, at least you had fun, and there's less stakes because you're putting less pressure on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you put more pressure on yourself, the stakes go way too high, and then that's going to affect your performance in the room.
I wonder if you can. I know you also spent some time talking about sort of self-sabotaging sort of habits or patterns that people have in their lives, and I would imagine that ties closely into the fear of success that you touched on earlier. I wonder if you could sort of talk about these self-sabotaging behaviors and why they're so prevalent in people's lives.
Again, it has to do with feeling like the imposter syndrome is a big factor there. You feel
Hmm.
that, do I really deserve to be here? And so fear of success could, or self-sabotaging behavior for actors can look like not preparing fully for the audition, being late to the appointment, or not giving yourself enough, or even blowing off auditions, like saying, "Oh, this is a waste of my time,"
Mm,
when there could be a lot of potential there. And when you blow off an audition, what we call a no-show, you ruin the chances of auditioning for anything else that that person is working on.
mm,
So that is one way, being just unprofessional, not, or unprepared. And it boils down to, again, the fear of success. And then even fear of success, and I talk about this in my book, is there's ultimately even a fear of money.
mm.
And having too much money, can be fear. Because if you grew up in an environment where sometimes you got messages where money doesn't grow on trees, or all rich people are evil, then you start
Right.
to think, well, if I'm, the abundant life is scary. I don't want that. That's what you're saying on the subconscious level. So, okay, that means I won't get the job. I won't work that hard to get that. So that's in a sense where all of that, a lot of that boils down to. It's multi-layered, and I think it all really just comes down to fear. Really
Interesting.
is a driving force of self-sabotaging behavior.
And so when we talk about again more strategies around how you manage that or deal with that, I would imagine the first thing is an awareness. You have to know what's happening, and I
Mm-hmm.
think when I talk about awareness, I oftentimes use this analogy of living room, right? So when you walk into the living room, you'll see your couch, you'll see your television, you'll see your coffee table. There's probably a lamp in the corner, maybe there's a photo up on the wall or something, and that's what a living room looks like. Well, if you turn off the light I then switched the light back on. The light didn't put the items in your view. They were always there. The light just illuminated and allowed you to see it. So that's what awareness is to me, is that light switch that allows you to see the things that were already there.
100%. That's a really excellent metaphor, and an analogy. Exactly what is going on here. Being aware of what's right in front of you is that it's, not an external factor, it's internal.
Mm,
What That's the first step, I think, to really start to overcome self-doubt and mastering self-sabotage. Is really, it sounds simple, and it is simplicity. It's just being aware of the fear, and now you can address it. Now you can, you know work through that fear,
right.
and work through that fear, and self-talk your way through that by, I deserve to be here. No, I worked really hard. Like when you were saying about the commercial that, I don't deserve to be here. Is sometimes a lot of actors will think that, and the counter actor is like, no, you do. You've worked hard. You've trained. You have every right to be in this space. Just like everybody else in that waiting room has a right to be in that space. So do you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's important. I think that sort of self talk. I'm a big fan of self talk and what we say to ourselves and how we think about ourselves, and I think that's huge, and really that sets the stage for any sort of significant success or ongoing success or sustained success, rather. Is how you feel about yourself, what you say to yourself, what you believe you can do. Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of really positive. Like I don't like even myself. I try not to even be like, oh, people say, oh, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? Or like, we can't beat ourselves up because the idea of beating yourself up and expecting good things to happen, it's just not going to work.
And it'll work against you because if you start focusing on what went wrong, you'll find anything you will start your mind go create situation that ever happened. What coming back even from my background in psychology, we're wired. Our brains are wired to find things that are wrong.
Mm.
It's that's what helps us survive for thousands of years.
Right.
The human species survives to find out what was wrong, but very rarely do we find out what went right.
Right.
And take credit for that, what went right. And then if you did make a mistake, which is human, learn from that. And now the next time, the next audition, the next interview, the next opportunity you get, you apply what you've learned, and it will not happen again.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you go back, you talked earlier about enjoying the process, right? And those are some of the things that you can do that will help you enjoy the process. So when you focus on what went right, or I oftentimes refer to that as celebrating your wins, right? So celebrating all the good stuff that's happened. You also then now know, well, first you feel good first and foremost, and that there's nothing wrong with feeling good, right? But you also kind of get like that key to success. You're like, okay, yeah, when I did it this way, this is what came out of it. And now you store that away, and now you keep that in your back pocket because you're like, okay, when I want to win, I just do this and I'm good. I love podcasting, right? And I find that anytime I'm going through sort of a challenging period or something hard or whatever, I intentionally find ways to devote more time to podcasting. Again, getting to engage in these kinds of conversations or dialogues are exhilarating to me. And so it's like if I can get that in that space, and not to say my problems have gone away or they become non-existent, but it allows me to focus on something that gives me good energy. And then that energy once you harness that energy, you just allow it to carry through. And it may or may not even aid you with the problem, but it still helps you get through it.
100%. It's just about being happy and enjoying yourself and remembering those successes and those little wins, those wins all the time. I always say win is a win. There's no such thing as a little win. It's a win.
Yeah.
It's a win. Period.
Yeah.
It's a win. It's a great thing. And doing what you love, like in your case, loving podcasting, it's great. And that's what I always tell actors is remember why you're doing this. You're doing this because you love storytelling. You're doing this because you love playing a character. Always remember that and always stay true to that. And if you get the job that's even more, cherry on the pie. That's great. If not, you had fun doing it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's the process.
Yeah. And again, the fun part, it's like there's an aspect of enjoyment that is so important. It's so sometimes I'll talk about the hills and valleys of life, right? And so on the hills, things are great and you move along, that's great. And then when things kind of go down, you go down and they're not so good and it's painful and it hurts and it sucks being there and no one likes it. But the key is understanding, okay, that thing gets me happy. How do I get back on the hill again, where I can experience that happiness and joy and satisfaction? And all of these things that we're talking about, Albert, it really is about knowing ourselves. So I'd love to sort of talk a little bit about just that process of knowing who you are and what's important to you and why that's significant for ourselves.
The main thing is just knowing who we are is really important. And for me, I love making an impact and helping other people. So even day to day as an agent, the part of the job that really makes it exciting is I play like sort of like an unofficial matchmaker, matching an actor to a job. And if they land that job, what really gives me even more enjoyment is calling that actor up and saying, congratulations, you booked the job, which is a huge accomplishment. And they're really happy. And sometimes their lives change. And that is what gives me meaning. Even when I taught for many years as a psychology instructor, and I've had feedback from students that sometimes will say, your course changed my life, or now I want to major in psychology after taking your class. And that is what drives me. That's what really gives me a sense of inspiration to keep going every day is just being able to make an impact onto other people. And the same thing with actors. You're storytellers. You're making an impact.
Sure.
You're impacting someone else's emotions. The audience of, you're influencing the audience emotions and changing their experience and perception of life. Even if it's for that 1 hour that they're watching that movie or
Sure.
show, you're changing their life.
Yeah, yeah. And why, to me, the reason why that's so important to know is it also gives you a good understanding where your sense of motivation can come from, right? So if I know that, it's about making an impact and it drives me and keeps you going, and there's an opportunity to do that, I'm going to take advantage of it. And when I do that, it will motivate me. Motivation doesn't always last forever, so you want to take advantage of those opportunities to give yourself a kickstart or a jump start into something, and that's what you create momentum and move forward. So I think the motivation aspect is really, really important.
Yeah, and it's called like finding your why. It's like your what is your why moment? Why are you here? Why are you in this space? And really staying connected to that. And even when times get challenging and tough, just remember that. Even having something written down, your why, post it up on your refrigerator, post it up on at your desk, and just look at that every time that self-doubt starts creeping in, or that am I doing the right thing, or I want to quit. If that mentality comes in, look at your why. Why are you here? What's your core purpose? And that'll reignite that motivation again.
Yeah. I'm curious if you had maybe a moment or experience where sort of that sort of transformative mindset shift happened for maybe an actor or maybe one of your clients, and what that difference was.
Well, it's just connected to an actor. I remember a couple of years ago, one of my actors was in a stage play in New York. It was an off Broadway show, and the next day I got an email from an audience member because my contact information was on his actor's website,
Uh-huh.
and the audience member wrote me back and said, "I just want to let you know, I saw your client's performance. You mentioned name." And said, "This really changed my life. I was so sad coming in here, and now
Wow.
I'm so happy." And when I broadcasted that, shared that message to my client got, emotionally in a good way, was touched. And I'm like, these are reminders of why we're here.
Mm, mm.
So you get a good review, or somebody says, or like in your case, hey, listening to your podcast, it changed my life, or
Yeah.
this episode really made me go on a different path. And that again is more reminder of the why we do things when we get those little reminders.
And I think it's important to pay attention to those little reminders because they're not guaranteed to come, and they don't always come, right? Like we'll use the example of this episode. It very well could touch someone and impact them in ways that we may never understand, and it's very likely that we may not know. They may just go off and they may hear something and fly off and run down the street and do something great, and off they go with their lives. And shoo, they skyrocket, off they go. Um, we'll never know it was Albert. You and I were shooting the breeze, and someone heard us say this, and that's what got them going. And I think that's why it's so important that you need to. So you talk about the why, right? And understand, figuring out your why and your purpose. And so once you've done that, then you stick to it, you follow it through, and every opportunity that you have to push it out or do, you take advantage of that chance because you never know who's going to hear, receive it, and feel blessed because you've done that.
100%. That's the best mentality to have, because we can watch YouTube videos and say, okay, oh, this has 150 or 200 reviews. Well, it's 200 eyes, but we'll rarely hear from any of them. Less than 1%. Sometimes we'll even comment or say anything. So we
Mhm.
don't know that. But if you're still doing that, that's great. And the same thing when an actor giving that performance, you don't know who's going to see that, who's going to be touched by that. And that's what has to keep you going. And that's where, again, putting that mantra, knowing your why and being connected to that why and rooted in that why, so that there are going to be days you're going to be self, and that's part of the human experience when you start experiencing self doubt. We all do that. from
Yeah.
time to time. But just being connected to that why is one of the ways to get through that. And even when you do get those positive reviews or those statements like that, I always say print it out, document it, and a
Mhm.
physical copy, not online, not
Yeah.
in your head, but actually have it printed out so that you can look at that. In my book, I call that the happy file.
Mm.
Creating your happy file. It's all of those moments where somebody brought to you and say, "Hey, your podcast changed my life," or "This episode was amazing." So that when you start to wake up and there's days where you may not want to do anything, look at that, and
Happy file.
the happy file. That should propel you to say, "Hey, okay, I need to record, or therefore I need to go out for that audition again."
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Even the name of it, Happy Files, makes you
Yeah,
smile, right?
yeah.
That's true.
How could you not? Yes.
That's right. And again, the whole idea of reading a file and it's just all good things about you. Like that's first of all, it's great validation, right? And validation is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I think if you're chasing validation, that's one thing, but to receive
Right.
it and I think it can set you up and even if it's just generally to make you feel good in that moment, like it's a
Yeah.
good thing, right?
100%. And there's a difference between, again, receiving it and chasing it. Like, I will not work with actors who say they want to be celebrities or they want to be the next Denzel Washington. I will
Okay.
not work with an actor like that because that tells me they're not going to have the grit and the perseverance. And there's only one Denzel Washington. There's only one of them. You'll never be that. Be you. And the same thing with like being a podcast host. If you're doing it to get notoriety or to get clicks or to be famous, I don't think a person will last that long in any type of space like that
Right.
because again the obstacles that come in. But if you do it because you authentically, intrinsically love what you do, that's what's going to get you through those
Yes.
good times and those times that may not be the most positive or desirable at the moment.
Yeah, getting famous was never my thought. I'm just plugging away here. I think I'm up to
Yeah,
500, close to 500 now. So it's just plugging away, right? And again, it's
that's
just that
amazing.
labor of love, labor of love.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's a labor of love, and there's a lot of actors I know that really don't want to be that they have no desire to be celebrity. They
They're
have no
introverts.
desire. They're introvert, 100%. And one of the surprising things that I found, and it makes perfect sense now, uh, is how many actors are introverts. Even the most larger than life personalities, when the camera's off or they're off the stage, they're really shy or
Yeah.
soft spoken,
That's
and they don't like the spotlight. You won't see them at those Hollywood parties or
sure.
those networking parties. They like being alone with maybe their family or even just in solitude sometimes.
I love it. It's funny.
Yeah.
But it's like you're an actor though. What do you mean? You're in the spotlight. Like, nah, I'd rather fade to black. It's okay.
Yes.
You mentioned before Rise Above the Script, your book. What made you write it?
So again, dealing with that when I first started, I was grappling with the notion of why were some of the actors telling me they were so hungry and wanting to work, but yet their actions were preventing that from happening. They were self-sabotaging, or what we call in the industry shooting themselves in the foot.
Mm.
Why was that happening? And recognizing that and normalizing the process of self-doubt, and dealt with fear. So I wanted to find a way to kind of normalize that in a sense, like it is common for you to fear. It is common to have self-doubt. Let's talk about ways to do that. And in the book, I talk about the happy file and knowing your why. That's the main reason I felt like if I can add a little space, because nobody was really talking about that. Everyone knows that that's common. A lot of actors self-sabotage, but nobody was really talking about it or ways to address that. And when I was doing my thesis for my PhD, there was a lot of literature about self-sabotage where it was a lot geared towards athletes, or musicians, but none about actors.
Mm.
And so I wanted to kind of bridge the gap a bit and talk about that because we need to have these conversations.
Hmm. 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 No, I agree, and as much as you're thinking about actors, I think any person can take, even in our conversation, it's very, very clear that this can apply to anyone in any aspect of their lives, right? And so it's a big one, and to gain that, it's really elevating that confidence, and I think it's funny. I think it's the first time the word confidence has come up, but everything we've talked about up to this point is really around the confidence, right? But it's a great way of elevating it.
It really is. It boils down to confidence. It boils down to self-confidence. And when you're self-confident, there's no self-doubt. You don't have self-doubt. And when you have zero self-doubt, you're going to be less likely to engage in self-sabotaging behavior because you're always going to be putting your best foot forward. And I always say having realistic self-confidence, because I also talk in my book about, sometimes having an inflated ego or high self-esteem can be problematic too. Because then you're not willing to handle constructive criticism.
Sure.
You're not willing to put yourself out there because you become really sensitive to criticism and feedback, and not willing to hear it. And that's going to also come up in self-sabotaging space too. So healthy self-confidence is, like what I often say, realistic. And part of that just boils down to, I work really hard. I deserve to be here, but I'm also a work in progress. I'm always learning. I'm always staying active. I'm always staying humble. I always say, keep learning. Keep always learning. I love to read. Even though I have a PhD in psychology, I'm always reading. I'm always learning new things.
Right.
Even as an agent, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm always learning new things about the business. You have to always have that learning mindset too.
Got you. Oh, listen, Albert, this has been fabulous. For listeners that want to connect with you or pick up a copy of your book, where can we send them?
Okay, we could definitely go to Rise Up of the Script on Amazon. And also you can follow me at Dr. Al Bramante on Instagram. And then just go to www.albertbramante.com. And I'm also, on Facebook and LinkedIn, under my name, Albert Bramante. I'd love to hear from you. And tell me your journey. I'd love to hear about your successes and love to connect with all of you.
Got you. I think it's wonderful. That's great. We'll make sure that the contact details in the show notes below, so everyone can again access your book or access you directly. Albert, this has been great. I really appreciate this. I'm glad we were able to connect this way. I love the direction. I love the focus too, right? And of the manner in which you found that kind of niche, if you will, and as well as the fusion we talked earlier between your two lives, right? And I think it's also nicely done. So congratulations on that, and thank you for being a guest today on the Audacious Living Podcast.
And I will thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this interview. I really enjoyed our talk, and I really appreciate what you do, and keep up. Here's to another 500 episodes of the Audacious Living Podcast.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Goodbye.
You're back. We are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Albert. In our conversation, he emphasized the significance of normalizing fears and enjoying the audition process rather than fixating on the outcome. He shared that many actors experience self-doubt, which can lead to self-sabotaging behaviors, ultimately hindering their success. The key takeaway from our conversation is to shift our focus from fear of failure to the joy of the journey. What I personally loved about the interview was Albert's genuine passion for helping others. His approach to tracking self-doubt and his emphasis on creating a happy file to document positive feedback received resonates with me big time. It's a powerful reminder that we can find motivation and encouragement in the smallest victories, especially during challenging times. I encourage you to connect with Albert directly for more insights and inspiration. If you can find him on Instagram at Dr. A. Bramante, or visit his website at www.albertbramante.com. Additionally, don't forget to check the show notes for his book, Rise Above the Script, and any offers that he may be presenting to our listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. I hope you found inspiration in our conversation today. And if you've enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, or share this podcast if you haven't already done so, to help us grow our community of audacious individuals. Together, let's continue to inspire one another to live our best audacious lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.